So there's a bit of a catch-up from the previous video. I'm sorry to report that a couple of days ago, as predicted by everybody, the Roberts 83i has streamed the impossible stream for the last time as far as BBC stations go. The only thing that's available now is the World Service on the internet radio function. Interesting that despite the BBC saying that MP3 streams are completely out of date and impractical, they can be kept for the World Service but not for the people who are paying the licence fee. But well, let's not go there. And of course we covered in that video that although the venerable and much loved 83i has been consigned to history, we were able to replace it with a not flawless but quite good 94L. There was still a gap in my modern radio life though, and that's caused by other things which are being gradually discontinued. One of the great pleasures of our somewhat attenuated summers in England, especially if you don't want to shell out for Sky Sports, is to be able to sit in your garden in the sun and listen to the cricket commentary, especially when there's a proper series like the Ashes going on as there is now, and not the pound shop versions of cricket like 2020 or, God forbid, the 100, despite the fact that England don't always quite live up to their billing. Now, Test Match Special has moved around a bit over the years, but the easiest place still to hear it is on Radio 4 Longwave.
Dropped it. He was moving to his right, an inside edge. It was low and went quickly, but he was standing back. He got plenty of glove there, and it was a chance that England absolutely desperately needed to be taken, but it wasn't.
And as we've observed on other videos, the longwave band is becoming somewhat depopulated, and the BBC has decided now to accelerate the end of longwave, and it therefore seems very likely that this will be the last year that we'll be able to listen to Test Match Special on that frequency. Now, the BBC does have a sort of pop-up channel called 5 Live Sports Extra, and that has for some time now also carried the live uninterrupted Test Match commentary. In fact, more uninterrupted than it is on Radio 4 Longwave, because they don't have to break off for the shipping forecast. But that isn't actually available on any analogue radio frequency. It's only available on DAB and the internet. Of course, I can listen to it on the internet on my phone, but I just prefer, as you know, to listen to radios really rather than phones. And although I have DAB radios, those ones are not particularly portable unless you buy an extra expensive battery pack for them. My other option that I have is the old Roberts RD5, which again we saw briefly in the previous video, but that one, although it can be powered by D cells, is also somewhat moribund because it doesn't do DAB+. So I decided I was in the market for a small, modern, portable DAB radio, and that's where my problems began. So I had a look around and did some research, not quite enough as it turns out, we'll get to that later. I landed on this one here, which is a Majority Little Shelford radio. Majority I mentioned when we were talking about the relative cost of Roberts stuff in the last video, and I said that, I had one of their products, their Fitzwilliam tuner, which I'm very happy with. So I picked up this one. As I said, it's called the Little Shelford. They're based in Cambridge, and they named their radios after various locations around there. This is quite a simple radio, which is what I wanted. It's just FM DAB, nothing much in terms of display, just a standard text display, no graphics or anything like that. Doesn't do internet radio. It does do Bluetooth, which I didn't particularly need. So it's got 3 modes, and when you switch it on, you select between those. So the DAB mode is what it's on at the moment. It's saying service not available on that because I haven't got the aerial up. And then you can go to FM or Bluetooth. One of the things I'll say, well, there's 2 things about Bluetooth that I don't think is brilliant on this. So the first thing is it will grab whatever last connected to it, and it doesn't tell you what it is. So I've got my phone, it wasn't connected to Bluetooth. As soon as I turn this on, it grabs Bluetooth connection off my phone, which I might not want it to do. I might have my phone connected to something else, or not connected to anything. So the only way you can get rid of that is to just forget it from the phone connection, which is a bit useless really. The other thing is it actually isn't very loud on Bluetooth. When you have to turn the volume up quite a bit. And I'm not using anything particularly new or old hardware here. It's an iPhone 13. So you'd think that's the sort of thing they might have tested it with. It's a fairly common phone. Now, one of the things I did like about this was it's fairly similar form factor to the old Roberts RD5. It hasn't got the same sort of build quality as that, and I wasn't expecting it for around sort of half the price. It also has its gold coloured finish on the top and on the speaker, but you can get the case in different colours, which I'm sure you can find one of them to your taste. Now, the other thing that's similar about the Roberts RD5 is having the aerial going down the back here. Now, this is probably the biggest comedy moment of this, except when he bought it, in which case it's not such a comedy moment. You can see this handle here. Now, generally speaking, I'd like that to be round the back, so that when I've got it playing, I want it like that, but unfortunately you can't, because if you lift that up to get the aerial out, first of all, the aerial hangs down quite a bit here. If you can see, it goes almost beyond the end of the radio. Secondly, when you lift it out, if you can do it without without knocking out the power supply wire, you can't get it past the handle. So once you've got the aerial extended, the handle has to sort of flap around at the top like that, or it has to flap around at the front. So that's definitely the sort of practicality that's imbued by Cambridge education, I think. You do get the feeling that somebody must have noticed this in the sort of QA stage before they even started releasing, the prototype stage. And they then, presumably, either they didn't notice it, which is quite frankly unbelievable, or they noticed it and thought, who cares? Either way, it's not very good. Anyway, we've got the aerial extended. If I put it into DAB mode,
or the commodity that's sought after. At this moment in time, the Glazers are in charge of the Man United sell. The moment they accept the price, the buyer will be in charge of the sale, and then due diligence will come in and kick the price
and
down a
the
little bit.
sound quality is fairly good. It's on speech there, obviously. I don't want to put a load of music on it and get copyright hit or whatever, but it actually sounds okay on music. There's no sound EQ or anything you can do to adjust the sound other than the volume. This is like a rotary encoder, continuous rotation thing.
When the tide goes out, let's see.
And it's fine, really. It doesn't feel particularly solid again, but it's, as I said, no problem with that. The sound quality is what you'd expect. It's reasonable, I think, and very listenable. In terms of DAB, you can scan all the DAB stations in with this button here, and you can move between them in the list that it's scanned with these back and forth buttons. Now, when I switch to FM mode, it's rather less useful because you have to sort of repeatedly press the button here to get the frequency you want. If you hold it in, it does start going up, then it goes into searching mode and quite often will go past the one that you're looking for, or pick up on something which isn't there really. So that's not good, and it's very, I don't know how long these buttons will last if you keep blipping up and down like that. In terms of presets, you can hold it down to set a preset and you press it once to get your list of presets. You can get up to 10 on FM and 10 on DAB, and if you go to preset you can scroll through the ones you've set, and I think you definitely want to set them. 10 is possibly, well, I don't know, some people say 10 is a low number of presets nowadays, but if it's a home radio, I don't think you're necessarily going to be massively inconvenienced by that. Anyway, there we are, pretty much the facilities that you would have expected. But the big thing really with this that is absolutely driven me up the wall with it is powering for this is an absolute show. I'll explain why. So at the back you'll notice you've got this USB, micro USB socket here, which isn't brilliantly stable. You only have to knock it a little bit and it will go off. There is also a power switch at the back which turns off the radio, as the effect of disconnecting the USB. We'll come to why that's important in a moment. If I turn that off, and then after a while I turn it back on again, so let's have a look at that. Well, obviously it's, if I put that then in standby, you'll see that it's lost the time and date, which is means that if you use the alarm facility, which it's got, so you can actually set a couple of alarms for it, well, forget it if you've turned the power off, because it's gone back to this until you put it back on DAB. And if you do that, and assuming you've got enough signal, yeah, if you do that, you'll find then that when you turn the thing back to standby, it's actually picked up the date and time from the DAB, so you'd have to reset it manually. But if you have lost it, you've lost it, and you don't necessarily know. Now, other people I've seen in reviews have reported that this little micro USB thing has a tendency to come off and fall back inside the set, and that hasn't happened to me so far, but I haven't had it very long. That's again an indication of pretty poor build quality, really. One of the things that attracted me to it was that it's got a battery compartment where you can run it off 4 AA batteries. You can indeed run it off 4 AA batteries, but not for long. I put in 4 brand new Duracells, spent an afternoon listening to the test match, and maybe an hour or so longer listening to Radio 2 or something like that, and then left it in standby mode. And when I came to it a day later, it was flashing low power on the front, so it had already used those up. And when I measured them, they were below 1 volt, so it had absolutely digested those batteries, brand new batteries, within a day. And interestingly enough, we look at the no load spec, as it says here on the manual that comes with it. It says 0.07 watts. Well, that's obviously not true. I think when they do that, they're talking about the no load spec, or the no load power consumption for this little power supply that comes with it. I'm not using that here because I've got plenty of USB hubs and power supplies around here, but I'm sure that will work. I'm sure there's nothing wrong with it. But they're not saying anything about the power consumption of the radio, so I thought I'd do a bit of an experiment with that and see how much power it actually consumes.
Aiming to win, to inspire.
So you're not going to get a lot out of it, are you? I mean, one of these Duracell AA batteries, I think they're rated for around 2,000 milliamp hours. And the point about batteries is that when you stack them up, obviously you've got 4 of these, which gives you 6 volts because they're 1.5 volts each. It doesn't work that way with milliamp hours, because you get the same no matter how many batteries you got strung together. So if you've only got 2,000 milliamp hours and this is taking nearly quarter of an amp, or let's say, to be charitable, 0.24 amps as we measured, then you're going to get 8 hours on that of playing time. Except that it's not quite as simple as that either, and I didn't get that, I don't think. And the reason you don't get that is because it's similar to fuel consumption on your car. You might have a value for fuel consumption for your car, but it depends a bit how you drive it. And the same happens if you have excessive current drain. If you draw very high current from these batteries, they don't tend to last as long as they do if you run something much simpler like a clock. So it's very optimistic to say you get 8 hours 20 minutes of playing time. And the other thing is that you'd get, according to that calculation, 20 hours of standby time. So if you don't switch it completely off, which I didn't, or which you wouldn't do also if you were trying to use it as an alarm, then 20 hours and your batteries have gone. And as I said before, I think that's a little optimistic. Now, I think this is basically not a problem that you can really solve with this sort of technology. I think I've seen other radios that have been reviewed that take the same sort of powering arrangements, and they all get the same reviews as say they don't last very long. You go through loads and loads of expensive batteries. You might get a little bit more life with lithium batteries, but they're even more expensive. I think what I'll probably do is use some of my rechargeable AA batteries, and I can stick those in a separate. This hasn't got the facility to charge batteries, but I can stick them in a separate charger and just, put them in when I want to take it outside, which may not be very often. Overall then, I think that despite my saying that Robert's stuff was a bit overpriced and Majority stuff looked pretty good, in my previous experience of Majority stuff, there is an element of getting what you pay for here. And I think there are big flaws in this, and I couldn't honestly recommend it unless you were going to use it. It would be fine. I mean, I think it's got a problem as a bedroom radio anyway, because as you can see, I'm having to prop it up so I can show you something other than the speaker here. If you had it next to your bed, you wouldn't be able to see it, because it would be facing upwards. If you put it down like this, then you won't be able to hear it because the speaker's facing downwards. So I think it's tolerable for leaving in a kitchen. If you plug it in and never move it around, it'll be fine. I think it would be nicer if they put one of those proper 3.7 volt rechargeable type batteries in it and allowed the USB to charge it, and probably also used a USB-C socket and not a USB micro socket, which the USB-C sockets are much more robust in terms of being able to be plugged and unplugged. If you want to plug and unplug this, as I said, people have reported a lot of unreliability about it. It's a shame really, because I think for the price and the functionality it's pretty good, but for what I actually wanted it for, which was a radio I could take out in the garden and play, not so much. Anyway, another diversion into newer technology. I promise we will do something a bit older next time, but for now that's all. I'll see you on the next one.